Almost all features in SOLIDWORKS start with a sketch. Sketching correctly and efficiently is the key to being a proficient designer. To get started, let's go ahead and choose one of the three fundamental planes. I can see I have the front plane, the top plane, and the right plane. I'm going to go ahead and choose the top plane, click on the sketch icon, and it starts a brand new sketch on that plane. Notice I have the origin in the center of my part. That's really important. We always want to tie into the origin. To get started with, under the Sketch tab up here, we've got a bunch of tools we're going to be using in sketching. The very first one is Exit Sketch. So when we're done with our sketch, we're going to click on that, and it's going to take us out of that sketch environment. Number 2 icon here is the Sketch or Smart Dimension, and we're going to be adding dimensions as soon as we actually have some geometry to sketch upon. After that, we have a whole bunch of other features that we're really not going to be touching on too much right away, but we will be in the course. At first, the only two tools we really need are the line and the circle tools. And in this movie, we'll just be using the line command. So go ahead up here and grab the line tool. And by the way, notice as I mouse over it, it gives me a little heads-up display showing me that L turns on the line command. So if you ever want to be in the sketch environment and turn the line command, just hit L on your keyboard or hit L again to turn it off. So now that I have the line command, there's two different methods for drawing lines. Number 1 is called the click method, and number 2 is called the click and drag method. So let's try it out. First things first, click once, and notice as soon as I click, the line is now attached to the tip of my cursor. As I move this ring around, you can see that the length of the line is now displayed. So 2.61, for instance. As I move it around here, as soon as I get to a vertical orientation, notice it shows me the angle. So I'm at 90 degrees, and notice that little yellow box. That yellow box is showing me that if I were to click right now, it would add an automatic relationship showing that this line is a vertical line. I can get the same thing if I go over here to the 45 or the 135. It'll show me what angle I'm at. Or if I come over here to the horizontal, notice I get that little yellow box again. This time it's going to say, hey, you're at a horizontal relationship. And if I were to click, it would automatically lock that line into being horizontal. If I click over here at an arbitrary location, close to 6 inches, notice as I click, now there's these little yellow helper lines showing me what is continuing to be collinear or perpendicular relationship. And it also gives me the heads-up display again as how long that line is. And this command is going to continue on until I hit escape or cancel out of the command. In this case, I'm not going to click on any one of the little helper lines. I'm just going to click out in space here. And again, it just keeps going. You get the helper lines every time you click, and just go ahead and click over here. And then notice as I get close to the closing this box off, if I come over here to the very beginning point, notice it gives me that little circle inside of a circle, which means it's concentric or coincident to the starting point. Click OK. And notice that command automatically gets turned off now because I've completed one enclosed shape. Okay, when you're happy with the line command, you can either click on OK or you can escape to turn that off. Now that I've got these lines on my screen, I'm trying to create a rectangle and I'm really having a hard time here, right? So it doesn't quite look like what I'm looking for. So I can click on the corners and I can drag this thing around a little bit. I can click on the lines themselves and I can drag them up and down, but I really don't have quite a rectangle. So I might want to move things around to kind of get it more in the orientation of a rectangle, but it's going to be hard for me to get a perfect rectangle without actually adding some other type of relationships or some other constraints onto the shape. So first things first, let's go and add our very first relationships. So a relationship is something like a perpendicularity or equal or parallel. So to create this shape into a real rectangle, I need to add a few of those things. So if you think back to your geometry classes, you might remember that to create a rectangle, you need parallel lines. I can click on this line here. I can hold down Control on the keyboard, pick this other line over here. And as soon as I let go of Control, I get these little available relationships. So I can say these lines are horizontal, they're vertical, they are collinear, perpendicular, parallel, equal, or fixed. Notice I also get those exact same relationships over here on the left-hand side of the screen. So I could say these lines are parallel, and notice what happens. They become parallel, and it gives this little green box showing that these two lines are parallel. And notice if I mouse over either one of those lines or the little box there, it shows the two lines that are involved in that parallel relationship. And notice that little 0 next to each one. The 0 means nothing more than to match a 0 with another 0. Same thing if I do it again. If I say this line here, hold down Control on the keyboard, pick this line here. As soon as I let go of Control, I get the little heads-up box. I can click on parallel, and notice these ones have 1 and 1. What that means, if I were to delete this one, click on it, hit delete on your keyboard, it deletes both of them, and that shows it back there. If that wasn't what you would like to do, click on undo, and it brings it back. Okay, so the question is do we have a rectangle now? No. We have a parallelogram right now. So what we'd like to do is make them a real rectangle. So what I need is to say this line here, hold on Control, this line here, and let's make these perpendicular. Now I have a rectangle. However, it's still not perfect. Maybe what we need to do is square this thing up. So maybe add a line here and say this line is horizontal. Now things are looking better. And the only thing we have that's missing is we have the shape, but we don't have the size or the location of the rectangle. So first things first is we have this origin here, and we generally always want to tie into the origin whenever we're working in a sketch. So I can drag the corner right over here and snap it right on top of that origin. Notice as soon as I do that, I get these black lines here. Everything else is blue, and now they're black. We have three different colors of lines. Number one, a blue line means it's undefined or underdefined. A black line means it's fully defined and knows exactly where it is. And a yellow or red line means there's got errors or cautions that's causing issues for us. Okay, first things first, let's go ahead and finish off this rectangle. So let's go ahead and grab the Smart Dimension tool, grab one of the lines, click where you want to place the dimension, type in 6.0. And again, when you have the dimensioning tool, you can click on the line itself, and then the second click is going to be where you want to place the dimension. In this case here, 3.0, type it in, then just hit enter, and it places the dimension. Notice everything turned black, and we're ready to go. Let's go ahead up to Features. Let's go up to Extrude. Let's drag this up. Let's type in a number of 2.0. Click on OK. And there we go. We created a brick. Sketching is the most important aspect of design and is the key to good SOLIDWORKS features. Take the time to think through your sketches and develop simple and effective layouts. Look for symmetry, use construction geometry, and add relationships. Modeling in SOLIDWORKS is repetitive. We use the same steps over and over to generate the features required to build a model. The 6 steps will help you to remember the basic workflow. Number 1, select a face or plane. When you first open a brand new part, there are no faces to choose from, so we have to choose one of the 3 fundamental planes to get started on. Secondly, start a new sketch on one of those 3 fundamental planes. Number 3, draw geometry to fully define an enclosed boundary so we can turn that into a 3D solid. Number 4, make sure you're using either relationships or dimensions to tie that sketch to the origin. Number 5, add additional relationships and dimensions to fully define your sketch. And number 6, create the feature. By remembering these basic steps, the modeling process will be easier to understand and more straightforward. Keep in mind the repetitive nature of all these features. The input and outputs will be different, however the steps are always the same. The line tool is the most common tool in our arsenal of tools. It's simple to understand and a very powerful tool. We've already played with it a little bit, but we're going to get a little more in depth in this movie. First off, let's click on Sketch, Start a Sketch. If I choose a sketch, it's going to ask me to choose one of these planes. I'm going to choose the top plane, and we're going to jump into the line tool. And this time, I'm going to start at the origin. But I don't want to start at the origin with the regular line tool. I actually want to go and choose the center line tool. So if you haven't added the center line tool to your tool palette, go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and choose the center line tool. And from that tool, I can go and drag a line directly up. And notice I get a little heads-up display showing me that it's roughly 2 inches long and 90 degrees, and it's giving me that little yellow box showing me that's a vertical line. Go ahead and click OK. Notice as soon as I click, I get some of these little yellow helper lines helping me to draw a nice square or perpendicular shape. So if I click on that line, I can drag it over here. This time I'm going to go out to about 4, come down over here to back to the origin. And notice as soon as I do that, it gives me these little helper lines showing me that I'm at the origin. So it makes it really easy to draw things in SOLIDWORKS like this. When you're done with that, go ahead and click on Escape and turns it off. Now notice I can drag this shape around, I can move it up and down. But right now they're all made out of construction lines or center lines. So construction lines and center lines are really the same thing, just depending on how you're using them. Now I can flip between the two very easily by clicking on a line itself and then coming over here and turning this box for construction and unchecking it. Turns it into a regular line. Same thing over here. I can say for construction, or if I wanted to, I could choose all these lines and turn them off to turn them all into regular lines. So you can easily flip between the 2 types of lines very quickly. What you want to use a construction or centerline tool is something that's not really going to create any geometry. It's just going to be there to help you or help you lay out a sketch. For example, if I had a line like this, I can make a line from the top to the bottom. What that allows me to do now is I have this line right in the center of that shape. And notice because I started in the center point, it gave these little relationships that snap to the midpoint here and the midpoint there. Now I can go ahead and draw something else. For instance, I could maybe use the rectangle tool, which we'll be getting into soon, but I just draw a little rectangle out starting at that center point. That way everything's tied together, and notice as I move things, automatically everything stays in a relationship to each other because they're all linked to different lines and center lines. Now, I don't have to use a rectangle tool. I could easily have created these with the line or center line tools. And notice that's exactly what happens when you use a tool like the rectangle tool. Is SolidWorks behind the scenes just created 4 regular lines and then 2 center line tools and then linked them all together. Notice it also adds a bunch of relationships. Keep in mind how relationships interact. Notice I've got these vertical relationships here and midpoint relationships here and here. And that's what's really defining the shape and turning this into a parametric model. So I can move things around and everything automatically updates with the line. I also want to point out a few other ways to create lines. If I jump up to the line command here, notice we've been using the click method. We click once where we want to start, click again when we want to end, and the tool stays active. If that's not what you want to do, if you just want to make one line, use the click and drag method. So click once where you want to start, and then hold down the left mouse button and drag it out to wherever you are. When you release the mouse button, the line ends, and so does the command. The line tool is the basis for most sketches in SolidWorks. Although it's simple to use, it's also one of the most powerful building blocks in the SolidWorks tool library. The circle tool is the next step in sketching. From the circle tool, we also get arcs. There are several methods to create circles in SolidWorks, and the most basic is a center point circle. Click once where you want to start the circle, click again where you want to define the radius. To get started, let's go ahead and choose a top plane, click on that, start a sketch, and come up here to the circle tool. Now notice we have the circle tool here. And if you click on the drop down next to it, we have 2 different types of circles, circle and perimeter circle. The most basic is the center point circle. Just click on the origin or anywhere else. Click once, drag out to the size you want. Notice it's defining the radius as I drag. Click again, and there it is. I can also do the same thing out here. Click once, click again where you want the radius to be, and there it is. If you want to move those circles around, notice this one here has an automatic relationship added to it, so it can't move because it's been tied to the origin. However, this one over here, I can easily drag it around from the center point by grabbing on the center point, or I can grab on the outside to change the size of that circle. So 2 different ways to move it around. If you choose the center point, you can drag it around. If you choose the outside of the circle, you can change the size. The other type of circle is the perimeter circle. Click on this, and this can give us 3 points. So my 3 points might be, notice there's 2 different types of here. I can choose a point here, and then a point maybe down here. And that will define that circle. So I can place a circle between multiple items. It's also a great way to draw circles if you have multiple items you're working with. For instance, if I have a couple center lines that are in my design, and I want to put a circle here, I can choose a perimeter circle, pick one of the corners, pick the other corner, and I can define how I'm going to place that shape between those points. It's a really handy way to easily create geometry and circles using a simple couple commands. The circle tool and the line command are the 2 sketch entities used most to build geometry in SolidWorks. Mastery of these tools is essential to being proficient in SolidWorks. Relationships and dimensions are what take simple sketch entities and define it into the design you're working on. Relations can control size, location, and equality between sketch elements. And dimensions can control angles, physical shape, and the distance between elements or the origin. Let's take a look. I have a sketch open on the top plane, and I have a few different examples here laid out on the screen. First things first, let's take a look at these 2 lines over here. So if I click on the first line here, as soon as I let go of the left mouse button, I get a couple options. And notice these are context sensitive. I only have 1 line selected, so I only have 2 options. 1, I can make it horizontal, or 2, I can make it vertical. And then finally, I can make it fixed. And fixed just means if I click on it, it just can't move anywhere. It's just stuck where it is. So I don't normally want to use that one, so turn that off. And notice how I did that, how I got deleted that. If you go back, just click on the green box and hit delete on your keyboard. Or you can right-click on the green box and choose delete from the menu. Next, if I choose 2 lines, this line here, hold on Control, select the next line next door to it, I've got a lot more options. I can say these lines are horizontal, they're vertical, they're collinear, they're perpendicular, they're parallel, or they're equal. In this case here, let's try out parallel. Wherever they are, they happen to be parallel, and if I grab one, I can move it around. Notice they operate as a team now. They're both parallel no matter where they are, and I can move things around. I can still change the length. If I want to make them the same length, I could also add a secondary relationship, choose both of the lines by holding on Control, and I'll say equal. Now they're parallel and they're equal. Notice now they are not spinning around. But what I can do is I can use that little fix icon. So click on the tip, not the whole line itself, but one of the points on either end, and choose fixed. Now I have a fixed dimension. Now that point doesn't move, and this point here will move around. So it makes it so I can actually simulate some motion inside of my sketch and see how things actually work and lay out. Down here, I can choose these lines here, choose both of those lines. I can say these lines are, for instance, collinear, and it puts them on top of each other. I can drag it out, and you can still see the point here, And they can be separate lines or they can be on top of each other. As long as they're collinear, they all operate as a team. And there's this little dashed line showing that those two lines are collinear. In fact, you can even bring this point and drop it on top of that point there, and that adds a coincident relationship. And now those 2 points, it's two separate lines, but they're still connected together and in collinear fashion. Up here, you got a couple circles. Go ahead and choose both the circles by holding Control. As soon as I let go of those circles, I could say these circles are co-radial, or they're tangent to each other, or they're concentric. Let's try all three. First one, co-radial. That just puts them exactly the same as one circle on top of the other, which is really not what we probably want to do in this case, but it does put the two circles exactly on top of each other. Hit undo to bring it back. Choose them both again. This time I'm going to say these are tangents. That means they're touching each other. Now they can roll this thing around. It maintains its tangency, and it's a nice way to add the tangency. If you don't like it, you can always delete the tangency. Hit delete on your keyboard, take it off, now you can move it back away. Select them both again. This time choose concentric. Now you have one circle inside the other one, and wherever they move, they'll move as a team. You can adjust different things here. And when you have a couple circles like this, when we add dimensions, you can add a dimension by choosing the inside circle and placing a dimension, maybe 1 inch. You can also dimension from the inside circle to the outside circle, maybe 1/4 inch. And I'm adding those dimensions by clicking on the first circle, then choosing the second circle, and then finally choosing where I would like to place the dimension. Now notice I already have a dimension placed, so if I choose this one, it's going to say, hey, you're doing something wrong here. Notice everything turns yellow, and you're saying, hey, you've already placed a dimension on that sketch, and you've already defined it as 1/4 inch. Do you want to add it again? So it's asking you a question. Make this dimension driven. Driven just means it's just a reference dimension. It doesn't actually control the design. Or you can maintain a driving dimension, and it'll actually cause an error in the sketch. So I make it driven. Notice it turns gray, and the other one turns black. So if I change the dimension here, click on 0.375, it automatically updates as well because it's just a reference dimension. However, if I were to go back and add a dimension from here to here, and I said, hey, I actually want to make this a driving dimension, click OK. Now what happens is this whole thing says it's unsolvable because it doesn't know, is it you supposed to use this dimension here or this dimension here, because it's giving the same information by both of them. So what you can do is delete either one of them, and then it's back to being happy. Notice all the lines are still blue though, because they don't know where they are. So to solve that problem, we either need to place this on the origin or add a relationship to where it is in space. One of the great ways to do that is using the centerline tool. So I'm going to make a line from here and bring it right up to the top. And now wherever I drag this thing, I've got a couple lines that attach me to the origin. I can add a dimension by clicking on the line. I'll say 0.75. And over here, I'll say this is going to be 2.5. Notice as soon as I do that, everything turns black and it knows exactly where it is because we always want to relate our sketches to the origin so they know where they are in space. Continuing on, let's go ahead and grab the Smart Dimension tool. And here's an angle. I want to define the angle. To do that, you're just going to choose the first line and then again choose the second line. And then you're going to place the dimension. However, Dimension tool is dependent upon where you place it in relationship to the angle. So over here, I've got 30 degrees or 30.96 degrees. As I move this around the circle, notice it's the same angle, it's just showing you how it would place a dimension differently. Same thing over here, same thing down here. So as you move around that circle, it keeps changing how it's going to place the dimension. In this case here, I just want to place it inside. I'm going to type in 30. Click OK and adjust the dimension. These lines can still move, but it is now defined as 30 degrees. So I can't change the angle. I can still just move things around. So again, I'd want to tie that into the origin or tie that into something else. And finally, I've got this rectangle here, and I want to add a few dimensions to that. To do so, I'm going to go ahead and choose the dimensioning tool. And there's a couple different ways to use the dimensioning tool. Number one is I could just choose a line itself and put a dimension, which is fine. However, what happens if this was not a full line? What if that line didn't continue the full length? For instance, I'm going to give you a sneak preview here on the Sketch Fillet tool, and I'm going to fillet these corners. They're going to have a rounded corner to those 4 corners. Okay, I'm going to increase the size. Now, in this case here, if I use the Smart Dimension tool, it only dimensions that length. So I'll say 2.0, it's only dimensioned from here to here. It's not the full length of the shape. It's really not what I want. So go ahead and delete that. Grab the dimensioning tool. This time I'm going to dimension from the left-hand side all the way over to the right-hand side. And then third, I'm going to place the dimension. That's called a 3-pick dimension. I can type in 2.5 and place the dimension. I always try to use a 3-click dimension because it allows me to radius the corners and make other changes. It doesn't affect that final dimension. Adding and using relations can be a huge time saver and makes your sketches easier to update and simpler to understand. Relationships and dimensions are used throughout SOLIDWORKS, and an understanding of how they work is extremely important. Let's learn about the various relationships and how they can help us to sketch better. I have open a sketch on the top plane here with a rectangle with 4 holes in it, and it's a fully defined sketch, and it is the correct size and the correct location. However, there's a lot of extra work here that we probably can save ourselves a lot of time. So let's point a few things out that probably we could improve if we use some relationships instead of all these dimensions. So let's go ahead and count all the 1-inch dimensions. So you got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times we're using the same 1-inch dimension. That's a lot. So the general rule of thumb is if you use the same dimension more than once, it's too many times. So let's go through here and see if we can replace some of these dimensions with relationships to simplify the design. Now notice these are all the same size hole. So instead of dimensioning all 4 of them, let's go ahead and delete these dimensions. 1, 2, and 3. And let's just leave one of those. And you can leave any one of them, doesn't matter. Let's choose the first one, hold on Control, and let's pick all 4 of those circles. And as soon as you let go of that, let's go ahead and choose Make Equal, or you can choose it from down here. So again, super simplifying the design by changing one of the dimensions. Now it changes all 4. For instance, if I change this to 0.5, all the holes automatically change. If otherwise, if I had them all individually dimensioned, if I changed one, I have to go ahead and change all 4 of them. And like most designs, they change rapidly. So you don't have to go back and do 4 times as much work when you can easily just change one and they'll all automatically update. It also makes it a lot simpler when you're making changes and less chances of error. Let's go back and change that to 1.0. Okay, next, let's take a look at all these other dimensions here. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. They're all the same dimension. Again, maybe we can use some center lines or some other reference geometry to help us out here. So I'm going to come down here to the center line tool. I'm going to make a line from the center point of this one over here to the center point of that one, to the center point of that one. And it's going to say, hey, you can't add that relationship. It's okay because we're adding all these other lines. It's going to over-define our sketch. So if you have that, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Click OK. Now, I can also go ahead and delete these other dimensions here. So let's go ahead and do that. So delete these. 1, 2, 3. In fact, I'm going to delete all these dimensions because I don't really want any of these dimensions interfering with my sketch. Okay. Then I'm going to continue my center line. Just connect the dots from the center point to center point, and then you can see that we've got a nice fully defined sketch. And notice, as I move one, they move them both. Now it's fully defined on the outside, but these lines are now blue, so that means they're undefined, so we want to fully define that. So again, I'm going to add one more line. This one is going to be from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to say that line, I'm going to hold down Control and choose the origin. I'm going to say that's right in the middle, the midpoint. As soon as I do that, now whenever I drag this out, it automatically works as a team. I can move one, move the other ones, and then I can just add a couple dimensions, maybe from this line here up to here. There's a 1-inch that way, and I can dimension this way. Again, 1-inch that way. As soon as I add those 2 dimensions, so it's defining it from the outside edges to the top edge, both as 1-inch, everything's defined. If then later I want to come back to my design and say, well, actually that's only a 1/2 inch, I can change it and everything automatically updates. So you're saving yourself, instead of 8 dimensions, you only have 2 now. Change it back to 1. There we go. How about these dimensions here? The 2, the 4, the 4, the 8. Let's get rid of all those. Delete, 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 delete. Okay, we can use the same technique we used here with that center line across the middle. Grab the center line, choose from one corner all the way up to the other one. Grab the origin of the part, hold down Control, choose the line, let go of that, choose Make Midpoint. Now it's defined around the midpoint, so I can drag things around and they all move as a team. And then just add a couple dimensions. 8.0, 4.0. And you can see our design is much simpler, it's centered around the origin, and it's very easy to update or change with much less chance for error. Understanding how to modify basic system options is essential to getting the correct results out of the software. Templates are the starting point for parts, assemblies, and drawings, and we're going to create our own templates to use in the rest of this course. To get started, let's go ahead and open up a new document. So click on New, and notice I've got 3 options. I got Parts, Assemblies, and Drawings. And we can create templates for any one of those 3 or all of them. But if you also look right below that under Advanced, and click on that, notice I also have a couple different places that I can find these templates at. A couple different tabs at the top I can click on for tutorial, and notice I only have a basic part, assembly, and drawing template to start with. When I first get started, I'm going to choose that part template and click OK, and that's the same one we've been using in all the other movies. So now we can modify this to anything we want and then save it out as a template, and the next time we get started, we'll have exactly that starting point for when we start building our model. The first few things we might want to be adjusting are maybe the units. So let's go up here to Options. Let's come over here to Document Properties, go over to Units, and take a look. I can change from millimeter to inches or any other combination between the two. I can adjust how many decimal points I can see in my part. When I'm happy with that, I can also go ahead and take a look at annotations, how things are going to look on the screen. I can look at the drafting standard I'm going to be using. I can modify balloons, datums, any of these things here, change the way angles are presented. I can change many different things as far as the detailing or setting up of these functions inside of SOLIDWORKS. Under my system settings, I can make any of these changes. Once you're happy with those, go ahead, click on the bottom, click on OK, and now that's saved out. How about the background? I can take a look at the background here. By default, I've got the 3-point faded background turned on. I'm going to change this over to this rooftop background. Bring a little color in the back. It's okay. How about the planes? Maybe I use the top plane quite a bit. So I can click on that plane. And I go ahead and show that plane so it's there. And maybe the origin. Maybe I want to show that origin as well. And if you don't see it there, just go ahead and click on it. And then make sure you go under View and make sure you're showing origins. That's a good starting point. And then maybe we're using a lot of aluminum parts and we want to predefine the material before we get started on building the part. So I can click on Material. I can right click on it. I can say Edit Material. I'm going to jump down to aluminum alloys. In this case here, I'm going to choose 6061 T6. There it is. Go ahead and click on Apply. And if I want to, I can also come over here to Favorites. And if I'm going to use that one quite a bit, I can go ahead and add it to Favorites. Go ahead and click on Close. Now we have a part that's looking pretty good, and this is a starting point of where I'd like to start when I'm building other parts. Now I'm ready to save this out to the file system. So I'm going to go up to File, click on Save As. And by default, it's trying to save it as a regular part. We really don't want a regular part here. We want this to be a part template. So I'm going to click on the drop down and choose Part Template. Notice I've got that part PRT DOT originally in there that we started from, but I want to actually save it out as a different template. So I'm going to call this one New Part. And that's going to be saved in SOLIDWORKS 2013 templates, or you can update it to 2014 depending on which file you're using. A lot of times when you install a newest version of SOLIDWORKS, it continues to use the older folders. So we have 2013 as well as 2014 installed this machine, and it's using the 2013 folder right now because we upgraded the software from that and it's not overriding. So either way you have it set up is not a big deal. When you're happy with it, go ahead and click OK, click on Save, and there it is. Now I can close this down, come back up to New, and notice there's my new part template right there. If I click on it, click on OK, it opens it up. Or if I want to, I can click on New, go back to the original template, open that up, and notice I don't have any of those changes. So you can have templates in all types of different shapes and sizes. You can have some from inches, some for metric, some with different backgrounds, different materials. In fact, you can even have the beginning stages of a part designed. Maybe you have a bracket you always use. You can actually design the bracket and save that out as a starting point for future designs. Also, if you have part templates you're going to want to save on a network share folder or a server so that everybody in your company can share the same templates, you might want to save those on a remote computer. And then point your SOLIDWORKS version to go and look for that folder. To do so, go up here to Options, come over here to File Locations. Under Document Templates, go ahead and click on Add, find the path, and then click OK, and they'll add it to your list of search locations for those new templates, and it'll show up as a new tab on the top of that new document dialog box. Creating a template configured with all the options you want to use in a design will save you time and help you focus on the design versus constantly having to modify system options on a part-by-part basis. Create templates for all of your most common part types.